Hello and welcome to Divorce Literacy. I'm your host, Alex Sanchez, and today I have the privilege of spotlighting a colleague and friend, Caroline Tanis. How are you, my dear friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time to join this podcast. So,
I'm excited to be here. You and I always have the best conversations, so it's gonna be great.
absolutely, absolutely. So, just a little background information about Caroline. Caroline is a certified divorce financial analysis, a CDFA. She's president and CEO of TFG Financial Group. She's been the president for about 2 years now, since you started your own practice. Caroline is also certified with a Series 7, Series 66, also in life and health insurance. And Caroline, I have to share a quote that I saw from you recently, which I thought was amazing, amazing. Um, and it's actually I'm trying to find it over here. It's actually here we go. 54% of women in the United States are breadwinners. This means that
Mm.
it's time for professional, high earning women to take the driver's seat when it comes to finances. And I could not agree with you. I mean, you're so, that is so true when it comes down to that survey that you put up there. Uh, with that being said, Carolyn specializes, her target audience is women, and this is near and dear to my heart because um, Carolyn, I actually had a family member that went through a divorce, and unfortunately, she wasn't she was part of the providing the money, she's
Hmm.
the breadwinner as well, both of them were, but but she didn't have control of the finances. She didn't know, A from Z, or and when unfortunately when she had to go through a divorce, she was, yeah, on top of dealing with all the emotional stress, you're dealing with
Yeah.
betrayal, lies, self-doubt. Now you're put in the pilot seat and expected to make financial decisions when you never had that practice, and that's near and dear to my heart. So I love that quote that you share there. So, uh, Caroline, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, how you got started in the industry, and your passion and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started Tanis Financial Group, which we shortened to TFG, makes things a little nicer. I spent half a decade at Merrill, where I started my practice, really grew things, and just kind of got sick and tired. I think, like a lot of us did during the pandemic, with the way things were going at certain companies and certain organizations. And so I also saw such a gap, especially for women, is that we're making more money than ever. Things are really, we're starting to close the gender pay gap slowly but surely. I hope in my lifetime we get there. And you look around and you have so many women who are still ignored from the conversation. They don't have a seat at the table. And also, if you want another, I love numbers. Can you tell? Another statistic: 18% of women, 18% of financial advisors, excuse me, are women.
Wow,
So
that's
where is that disconnect coming
right.
from? So for me, you want to work with somebody who understands you, understands your struggle, and especially when it comes to divorce, it's such a sensitive topic, like you talked about, saying, okay, you just went through and are still going through this emotional trauma. Even if it's an amicable divorce, you are still walking away from a situation where, and you see this every day, you're splitting up the house, you're splitting up your lives. It's still not what you had planned for or thought your life was going to look like. Even if you're walking away as friends, you thought you were going to grow old with that person, drink pina coladas on the beach. You did not think you would be separating everything out.
Right, right. No, yeah, and it's amazing how, focusing on marriage. It's amazing, and I'm actually just thinking about my own personal experience. I did go through a divorce, and on my first marriage, I remember that. Well, going into the divorce, they never give you like the book of guidelines or the book of rules
Yep.
when going into divorce, and that mainly is, if you look at divorce studies, the main reason for a divorce is is finances.
Mhm.
Sometimes you marry into debt, not knowing the debt
Yeah.
of your spouse, and then obviously when unfortunately a marriage doesn't work and you're going through a divorce, now is when you get hit with all these laws and guidelines and whatnot, and it's unfortunate what happens there, and that's why I wanted to have you on, Karen, because what you do is amazing. Is amazing, and to be able to educate the female audience is big. So I know that you get hit with this question in your industry, just like mine. You get hit with CDFA. What is that?
Yeah.
And what, right? And what's the difference between a CDFA and a financial planner? I already have a financial planner, and I'm going through a divorce. I got my financial planner. What's the difference? Why don't you elaborate a little bit on that?
It's funny too, because it's like if you look at my LinkedIn, it's like CDFA, MBA. And so people who are not in the industry look at that and they're like, what the heck is the alphabet soup after your name? And I'm like, it just means I spent a ridiculous amount of money on education. Wouldn't change a thing, but it's definitely from a spot of passion for me, going after all of these things. But so the difference really between a CDFA is that I went through a rigorous process to get this designation to learn more about and really become a specialist in it's three parts really, right? So when you're going into the marriage, people talk about a prenup. When you're in the marriage, how are you commingling assets? What does that mean? Nobody when they're in a marriage wants to think about, well, if we combine our assets, this means that if we do one day get divorced, no one goes into it thinking that. So I do just, even when I'm meeting with clients now who are married, I just say to them as they're combining assets, I'm like, hey, just so you know, here's the impact this has. I never say if you get divorced, but I just want people to understand it because in today's day and age, they feel very strongly about here's how we should keep things separate. Here's how we should commingle. And the third part of being CDFA is, and probably the meat of it, is if someone is actually going through a divorce. So it gives me the ability to go to court and do all of the forensics to help people find where the assets are. I also have the ability, and this is one of my favorite things to do, is to project out what a settlement would look like. In a lot of cases, and especially this, Alex, is that women stereotypically and statistically like to keep the home, and especially if they have kids, to keep them in the school district. And so in order to do that, they oftentimes are giving up other assets. And so I can then sit down with them and say, hey, if this is what we want to do, here's what it looks like if you're giving up cash or giving up retirement. And that way too, they also know what their focus needs to be after the divorce, right? If you're giving up some of your retirement funds, okay, that needs to be a really big focus for us to rebuild that, for example. Right. So projecting out those settlements, and it's amazing how many, especially women, will come to me afterwards and they're like, how come I didn't know about you when I was going through the process? Like, I would have never gone for the settlement that I did because I didn't realize what impact it has. And that's also people getting so worn down during the divorce process. They're like, get me out of here. I can't do this anymore. So they just take whatever and run. And so I really try to be an advocate for the client because I can have a little more of a neutral opinion and fight for them when they are in this space where you're just emotionally worn down.
And that is key right there. When you, I mean, what you do, Caroline, you're a big component of the divorce case and of the divorce team. And as you mentioned, the individual that's going through divorce is going through a lot of turmoils. They don't want, oh my God, they just want to get rid of it as fast as possible. That's why you need a professional like yourself giving them study cases and okay, this is your financial situation and this is what's going to happen after the divorce, and you can tell them exactly what's going to happen, what needs to happen, what steps needs to be taken in order to have success after the divorce. That's amazing. So Caroline, as you know, working with a lot of divorce cases, you know that every divorce is a unique journey. There's no two divorces that are that start the same or end up at the same. There's no such thing. What kind of advice would you give someone that's looking to start, the process for divorce or entertaining the thought of divorce? What kind of advice would you give that individual as far as the financial side, what should they be looking at? What should, what should they bring to the table when, obviously they're meeting with their divorce attorney and with you, hopefully, what should they bring to the table? What advice would you give them?
That's a really good question. And I actually had somebody ask me this a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to break it down like I did for them. On the personal side, you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because I have seen
Excellent.
both men and women, and I'm sure you've seen it too,
Yeah.
who just get absolutely destroyed during the divorce process. I'm talking like, when they do those flash forwards of like how the president has aged, they should do that for divorce cases, because you just watch the turmoil that people go through, and it's horrifying. So make sure you are taking the time for yourself, whether that's taking a walk, making sure you're eating well, exercising, maybe you need a facial, whatever it is. And it sounds crazy to do, of like, how can I go and treat myself or do something small for myself? Divorce, especially now, and you and I have had this conversation of how backed up the court systems are from COVID.
Yeah.
It's a long process. It does not happen overnight. And so if you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to end up giving a year or two up of your life that you can never get back, right? You need to see this as a new chapter and starting to take care of yourself and what you want the future to look like. On the financial side, the two biggest pieces of advice I give are, number one, have the information. Make sure you are getting copies of statements. Make sure you have even, it's a very difficult situation, especially if you weren't as involved in the financial relationship or financial side of things, because it's very easy for money to get hidden. And that feeds into my second point, which is make sure you have a really good financial team. If that's, and not even just financial team, but your divorce team is very strong. I've seen people who sit there and they're like, oh yes, we had a financial planner, so I'm just going to keep them. I'm like, well, if you weren't the one meeting with them, a lot of times I've seen this, and this is not necessarily the right thing to do, and it breaks a lot of standards in the industry, is typically financial advisors meet with the man. They have the relationship to them, and so then they have the allegiance to them in a divorce. Do you want to stay with the same person? And it's a little too complicated and the waters get really murky. So having just that outside person come in, and two, utilizing, make sure you have a great divorce attorney who's not just there to ring the bill, but is your advocate. And you will get that gut sense and feeling. Make sure you're meeting with, if you're going to split up the house, somebody like Alex, who is able to walk through the process of a mortgage and is actually going to sit there and be your advocate. Life insurance, make sure you have a good insurance person who's going to walk you through things. And then the last one is estate planning. So many people forget that they need to change these things because your estate has now changed, right? Your assets have changed. Who you're going to leave your money to has changed. It breaks my heart how many divorce cases the woman forgets to update and take the beneficiaries off, and the man as well. But for some reason, they always seem to be like, let me get her off right away. So I am constantly trying to advocate for women. I'm like, please make sure you change your beneficiaries. You really want him to get the money? What about your kids? What about your family? Make sure you are updating these things, because you don't want something to happen and he is left in charge.
And you know what? I love what you said with the alliance. Because you're so right. I've dealt with cases where the husband was the one taking care of the financial aspect of the situation, and he was working with a financial planner, and obviously the alliance is with the husband. So now coming in the wife, and now she has to handle all of this. Yeah, no, it's definitely
Yeah.
shop around for or interview a good financial planner, and most important, a CDFA is what I definitely recommend. And the estate planning is so key. You're so right with the estate planning. I've had situations where life insurance, they still have the excess beneficiary, and kids as well. I had a conversation with a client who told me that her estate planner had recommended for her to put her kids as guardians for her kids once they turn 18. And I didn't know this, and you can maybe shed a little more light. I didn't know that once a child turns 18, they become an adult. God forbid something happens to them, medically, or where they can't make decisions for, and their parents are not on their will or on the estate to make, proper decisions, medical decisions, they're left alone over here. Like, I wasn't aware of this. That's amazing. How something.
Yeah. And that's also something. So the reason I got into my CDFA work as well is because my parents are divorced. I was raised by a single mom. And so for me, it was very much so not an amicable divorce for them. But so for me, my estate planning was incredibly important to do for myself, because I didn't want to put them in the position to have to make those decisions on my behalf. And you have people now that haven't talked to each other in 15 years. I'm trying to do the mental math over here. And so for me, it was incredibly important, because in a medical directive, I want everything listed out of what I would want my decisions to be. Where do my assets go? Who gets what? Like, I made it very clear. Yes, it's a morbid conversation to think about and have, but I never have to think twice about it, right? I know those decisions are made. As my life changes, I will update them. But even too, if you are and I see a lot of people go through this, men and women, you're now divorced, right? Everyone always had the default of, well, their spouse would make the decisions for them. And so now you're sitting here, especially if you're getting divorced in your 40s, 50s, if the kids aren't 18 yet, your parents are starting to age, you need to lay these things out and have these decisions, because who's going to make them for you now?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What qualities and criteria do you feel that someone that's going through a divorce process should ask the CDFA before acquiring their service? Like, any advice that you would give someone that's looking to plan their financial future?
Yeah, any financial planner or CDFA, in this case in particular, I recommend that you work with a CDFA, just because they have that experience and background and training. So they know how to do a lot of the forensics. They're able to spot out certain things that you might not necessarily, or another financial planner might not necessarily know to find. And so one big thing to really ask them as well is, how are they going to work with the rest of your financial team, right? So I work very closely with a lot of divorce attorneys and a lot of estate planners, because that is so important during this time, right? Is the communication between me and the divorce attorneys. Is I always make sure we have a good relationship, because that way I know and can be the best advocate for my client. If you have somebody who's not in this situation willing to be a team player, they have to get off the field, if we're going to go with that metaphor. And so you need to know that everybody you are bringing into your life in this moment is advocating for you. And that is very difficult when you are in a vulnerable position, right? So ask them questions, make sure you are researching them. In today's day and age, it's very easy to do a Google search, to look them up on Broker Check, make sure they have a clean background. These are really key things to do, because I think we've seen in the internet, a lot of people just pop up and they're like, oh, all of a sudden I'm an expert in this. What qualifications do they have? What background? Do they have experience? And this is a very fair question to ask somebody, is, do you have experience in X, Y, and Z? So every divorce case is a little different. So maybe you have a custody battle going on, right? And that plays into child support, alimony. Ask them if they have experience and how they would handle certain situations. And if they can't pass those questions, how are they actually going to do being in court or being in mediation and responding to things?
Excellent. Excellent. Carolyn, what makes a successful divorce in your opinion?
That's a great question. I think it resulting in peace and you being able to turn a new leaf and a new chapter. We can talk about finances and numbers all day long, but to me, I always really harp on clients and say, money is a tool, right? Money is a tool to build your dream life and to move forward. And so divorce being successful is that, there's always going to be some give and take in a divorce. You're not going to equally walk away and be like, okay, this was great. Thanks so much for the last 5 years. Enjoy your life. I'll see you later. Rarely happens, if ever. And so for a successful divorce is one where you walk away and you move forward and move on with your life, rather than letting it destroy you.
I love your the question that the response that you gave, where you said take care of yourself. I love that, because that really is that, even if it's just going out for a walk in the park,
Yeah.
just to let go and breathe some peace into your life. Absolutely. Caroline, if someone wants to get in contact with you, what's the process for someone to, by the way, folks, I'm going to have Caroline's link for her website and her contact information below this video. But what's the process for someone to, set up an appointment, consultation with you? How's that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll also give you my email address as well. Feel free to email me and I will send over my calendar link and you can schedule an intro call. So I always do an intro call. I like to get to know everyone first, make sure it's a great fit. And then from there, we'll talk about, depending where you are in the divorce process, it's a little different. I do frequently get the question, people ask, they're like, well, when should we reach out to you? The sooner the better. If you know you're going to file, that is a great point to start. But it's also better to do it late than never, right? If you know you're getting ready to settle, or even if you've now received the funds and you want to start managing them from there, any point in the divorce process is worthwhile to reach out, even just for education and questions. I try to be as much of a help too. If I don't have the answer, I am very big on pointing you in the right direction. And we also, if you want to get in contact with me over on my website, tanisfingroup.com, there is a contact form on there and it comes right to my email and you can reach out that way as well.
Awesome. Is there any financial or any documentation that they need to bring when they have this consultation with you, or is it just just an interview, just a verbal? What do you recommend for them to have ready for you?
I would say give me a good idea, and what will be part of the conversation is where you are in the divorce process. So get a really clear understanding of what dates, what deadlines you have coming up. And then from there, I probably will turn around and ask you for whatever documentation we need. I will send you a link to a secure portal where you can drop documentation in so I can get a very clear idea of where you are and how things are going. And to come into this knowing that things can change on a moment's notice. And I'm sure you've seen this too, especially in divorce, is that one day it might be going great, the next day not so much, or you might be, fighting endlessly and all of a sudden the storm clears. So be very nimble and open. And I just ask that anyone who comes into a meeting is open and willing to share so I can help you and direct you in the best way possible.
Folks, understand that Caroline is a piece of the puzzle when it comes down to being the divorce team. So it's not only your divorce attorney, it's also Caroline as a CDFA and a CPA and a CDLP as well. A lot of professional divorce professionals working on your behalf. Now I have a question for you, and forgive me, this is my part where you educate me or give me some knowledge.
Let's hear it.
So Carolyn, we 2023, we're at, like you mentioned, we have information, we have the technology. Why is it that the stats for women is so low when it comes down to finances? Why is that? I'm just curious with that. And I'll give you an example here. As I mentioned, this is my second marriage. My first marriage, I was very young, and it was pretty much, you have your finances and I take care of my finances, right? And it was really everything was separate. We were married, but everything was separate. I didn't know what she made. She didn't know what I made. And
wow,
it was one of those situations, and
yeah,
we're very independent. And I'll tell you, I mean, I made money, but I also wasted a lot of money. And then, once the divorce came, it was it was a struggle to get things aligned and agree on stuff. Now on my second marriage, things are different. Now, we have joint accounts. We have, I literally give my wife my check, and she handles the finances. And I tell you, she does a great job. I mean, thanks to my wife,
love
I'm
it.
save money. Women are savers for some, men spend. Men, we love to spend. We love to spend. Women
But
love
everyone
to
thinks it's
save.
the women with shoes and bags. And I'm like, we're also pretty good savers, which I think a lot of
Very
people
great
don't.
savers. I can verify.
Yeah.
Thanks to my wife. I'm going to show her this video, by the way, so she knows that I'm giving her credit. But why do you think? I mean, why such low stats on those numbers for women when it comes down to finances, Caroline?
A lot of it, so there's two parts of it, right? You can look back at history, right? When it's funny, I have an intern this summer and I was talking to her and had her do an exercise looking at women's financial history. You look at our parents, for the most part, when they were born, at least, women couldn't have credit cards. They couldn't sign a mortgage without a co-signer that was a male. That was the 60s,
Oh
right? Is
wow,
that they
yeah,
could not do those things until the 60s. This is not, we're not talking about 1708 or, the pre-founding of the country. We're talking in our lifetimes, these
right.
people, were not, these women, not people, were not able to do these things. And so that, from an emotional standpoint, for so long, women were told, you can't be trusted with money. You can't have a credit card. You can't own land. And it takes a lot of time to undo that. I even watch with my grandmother is 96, bless her soul.
Wow,
And
wow,
she,
wow.
yeah, she's a fighter. And so even to, I remember when my grandfather died, her writing a check was the end of the world because she never thought she would have to do this. She was like, this wasn't the way life was supposed to be. I was supposed to die first. I never wanted to handle the money because her whole life she never did and was told she shouldn't, right? That wasn't her job. She was supposed to take care of the home. She was supposed to cook and clean and raise the kids, and then me as the grandchild. And so now that her job is done, all she has left is to take care of the finances. And she's like, this stinks. But she was also never making money. So now you have this change of status quo where women are making more money. We are slowly but surely building more executive positions for ourselves. And it's time to now take that driver's seat. But I think there are so few resources where women feel empowered to do so. And also where someone is going to come sit down with you. And this is what I say to every single one of my clients, male, female, non-binary, you name it. I say, I want you to ask me the dumb questions, because whatever you think is dumb is burning in your mind and it's stopping you from reaching that next level. If you don't know what a stock or bond is, ask me. I will happily sit here. And if you want to know, I will teach you. If you don't want to know, that is totally fine. At the end of the day, you need to know two things. Number one, if something happens, you need to contact me and trust me enough to ask me. And number two, you have to be comfortable enough asking a question, no matter how dumb or silly you think it is. And when I say that to women, especially, and even a lot of men, honestly, because I think we assume they know so much, but it's really a little bit more of a facade, you verbally
Absolutely.
hear them relax and let out a sigh.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's I couldn't agree with you anymore. And it's amazing how we have all this education, all this training, and going, remember reminiscent of college and even high school. They never train you about finances. They never train you about health, and those are the two major components that you need to get through life.
Yeah.
Without having any major issues, but amazing. Carolyn, is there last question? Ready for this one?
I,
Is there
I
life
hope so.
after divorce?
There is a whole new chapter after divorce. And I think it's one you didn't see coming. And when I start working with divorce clients and we're going through, financial planning after the divorce is settled, especially, is I do a 30-minute call with them all about just what they want their new chapter of this life to look like. We don't talk about money. We don't talk about, what we need to do. What do you want life to look like? And so I sit there and I ask them different prompts. What do you want family to look like? Do you want to travel? Do you want to just sit at home and read books endlessly? There are no wrong or right answers. And we take 30 minutes of them just sharing all of it.
That's amazing. You pretty much plan there. You put in paper the outcome. What
Yep.
they want, and this is what needs to happen. These are the steps you need to take in order to achieve. life after divorce.
Yes. Do
Amazing.
you think there's life after divorce?
I don't think I know there is. I know there is life after divorce, and a lot of people think that I advocate for divorce. I don't. I definitely pray for those that are going through a divorce, and obviously it's not the first choice, but unfortunately there are situations where you have to get out of a marriage. I will tell you that there is life after divorce, and it begins when you meet with someone like Caroline, a professional like Caroline, that not only will help you but will also educate you. Caroline, is there any like material, any I know you do a lot of speaking, a lot of educational appearance out there. Is there any access for that information for them to maybe go into a YouTube or a link that you can provide?
Yeah, I actually have a blog that comes out weekly. And so it's a great mix of different topics and inspiration and giving you tips on money and education. So I try to make it all encompassing. So if you head over to my website, you will see the drop down for it and you can read all of everything is archived in there too. And at the bottom of my homepage, if you scroll all the way down, you can subscribe. So it comes into your inbox every week. And it's a good mix of a variety of topics because I know there's people who are in so many different stages of life that I want to be able to really educate as many as I can.
Folks, again, I'm going to include Caroline's link to her website, and you can get more information on her material and all the advice that she has for you. Caroline, another thing that I want to ask you is when someone is and this I promise this is the final question. I know I keep saying that.
That's okay. You and I can talk for hours. So.
I love conversating with you. But when someone is going through a divorce, and I know that you mentioned take care of yourself. And I'm going back to when I went through a divorce. I know there was a lot of mentals, where I had to like after the divorce, I had to like kind of like free up and
Yeah.
talk to someone, and do you advise consulting with a therapist or whatnot? Is that something that you would
Yeah,
advise?
I love that you brought that up. And I think that is such a component that I should have brought up earlier as well. So I'm glad you mentioned this, is that it's something I don't think we talk about enough, is that even if it's just while you're going through the divorce, you need to have an outlet or have someone to talk to, whether you to go to a divorce support group or if it was a really rough divorce. I know things exist like the Battered Women's Shelter is a really great resource, or even just speaking with a therapist or psychiatrist, whichever is the right fit for you. A great place to go is even just talk to your primary care doctor. Ask them, based on your situation, what they're seeing with your health and wellness, who they recommend would be very helpful for you. It's an emotional process. I think like we've covered today is even if it's amicable, even if it's, you're just simply parting ways and you're not meant to be together anymore, you pictured a life with that person, right? You never thought, no one ever gets married and is like, well, if it doesn't work out, here's what we'll do. It's,
Yeah,
I went to so many weddings this summer and you sit there and you think about the statistic of, okay, half of these will end in divorce.
no, absolutely, absolutely.
Which is
It's
crazy.
unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I mean, it's unfortunate to say, nowadays, 5-7 years is a long time being married, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and kind of another thing that I do want to bring up is that you brought up a good point about talking to your doctor. A lot of people don't know that if you go to your HR department where you work at, they have to provide a list of people that you can speak with, professionals that you can speak with, especially if you're going through a divorce. So definitely look into that, folks. If you are going through a divorce, get therapist, speaks to someone. HR by law has to help you and provide you that information. And in some occasions, they cover that. Your insurance covers that. So
Yeah, I was gonna say insurance is a great one to reach out to as well to find out who they have in your network, what type of coverage you have, if they'll cover anything. So I'm glad you brought that up because it could even be covered by insurance. So if so, you're using your insurance benefits, what could even be better?
absolutely, absolutely. Any final thoughts, Carolyn?
This was great. I appreciate you having me on. This was a great conversation. So I hope everyone watching found this helpful. Have you at least have a couple tips to take away. And I think I speak for both Alex and myself when saying that reach out to us. We're both very big on educating and supporting, especially in the divorce process, no matter where you are in it. And that if we don't know if we're not the right person, we have a wide and vast network and we can give you and point you in the right direction.
Absolutely. Caroline, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your knowledge and your expertise. And folks, please reach out to Caroline. Her information is going to be below this link, this video, and please contact her. I highly recommend Caroline, as I know that what she offers is not what a traditional financial planner can offer you. So definitely reach out to her at a minimum. Set up a consultation with her to get more information on what to expect and what steps you should take during a divorce. Caroline, thank you so much. You've been great, and I look forward to seeing you on future ventures.
I'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much.
Bye bye.